Center for Media in downtown Cape Girardeau. Welcome to Focus on Southeast, a program on issues and events impacting the campus of Southeast Missouri State University. I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. The College of Education, Health, and Human Studies at Southeast educates the region's nurses, teachers, counselors, and health professionals. There are more than 60 undergraduate and graduate programs across 7 departments, and we're going to learn more about the college with Dr. Joe Pujol. He's the dean. Good to see you again, Joe.
Nice to see you too, Dan. Thanks for having me.
You have a lot of different departments. I think we could spend, if we talked about those, we'd probably run out of time.
We would.
So kind of tell us about your college, though, and give us some of the highlights of some of the departments that you have.
So we have the allied health program, and nursing. So in kinesiology, nutrition, recreation, we have dietetics and health sciences, public health, respiratory therapy, which is a new one. We also have mental health counseling, school counseling, and we of course have communication disorders, which is speech language pathology, as well as nursing. All the education programs come under us, and then I can't leave out Child Development and Family Studies, which is the Department of Child and Family Studies psychology. So
yeah, and you
got it on there. So.
That was pretty good. And you there's some centers that you oversee too,
yes,
right?
We have the University School for Young Children, which is the university's child care center, as well as the University Autism Center, Horizons Enrichment Center, the Apple Project, and Educare, plus we sponsor a charter school. The first charter school in St. Louis has been running for over 20 years, Live for Life Academy, and we've sponsored them since their inception.
Yeah, how's that doing? We've not talked about that in a while. How's it doing up there?
Live for Life is doing very well. This is our first year to have pre-K through 12. The school started as a middle school, and they found themselves constantly playing catch up. So the students would come in and they would be behind, and by the time they left in the 8th grade, they had caught them up. So then they opened the high school, and and had really good outcomes. And then my first year as dean, we started the elementary school and started it with K1, 2, and now we're all the way through K through 5, and of course the 6 through 12 has always been there. So we're all, and then we have an agreement with a Head Start program for pre-K slots. So we're pre-K through 12 now. And the school's a total about 530 students, does very well. Has some really good outcomes, well beyond or surpasses our standard, which is St. Louis Public Schools. But the school has focused on getting students into apprenticeships and into the workforce, as well as getting them into college, and done very well. So I'm very proud of them.
So do SEMO graduates from here, from the teaching program, do they go, is that like an automatic sort of thing? Is that kind of worked out?
Not as automatic as I would like.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, but we have 6 former Southeast students who are on staff at Live for Life. We really push the school as much as we can. We've done a lot more, and one of the things I'm really proud of in my time as dean is we've done a lot more to partner with Live for Life. They have an excellent fashion program, and so I've connected them with theater, with costume design, because I want to show the students that there's other pathways than just fashion design. And so right now there's a lot of students who are interested in cybersecurity, so we're about to start offering the dual credit computer science class, and we have a group of students coming to campus this winter to visit the cyber range and other places on campus. So we're increasing our connections to Live for Life, so that we can provide the students at Live for Life and our students at Southeast with better opportunities.
It sounds like there's even more room to continue to grow that as time goes along.
Well, I started a scholarship fund for urban student teachers with the idea that we would have more student teachers going to schools like LIFT and other charter schools, as well as St. Louis Public Schools. And we actually have a student, I was just told today we have a placement for a student teacher at Lift for Life for the spring semester. So, and we try to get more. It's just not always possible.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk a little bit about the Edvolution Center. You told me before we began to record that it's been a new mission statement. It's been kind of upgraded.
Yes.
Tell us what's happened.
Well, most people are aware that the university reorganized in 2018, which is how there's so many things under my college. And when we did this reorganization, when I came into the dean's office in 2019. I saw a need for us to build the college around some central themes. The Edvolution Center was the keystone really for all of these things, and so what we did is we redefined the mission of Edvolution, and we have the trademark for the name, so we're not going to change that. But but we and it's a brand, so we're certainly not going to change it. But we redefined the mission to fit the whole college rather than just education. And so we're trying to build things through interprofessional education, through strategic technology initiatives. We're trying to build a unifying point for the college. And so we have faculty from other areas who are not education, like communication disorders and nursing and athletic training and sport management, using the Edvolution Center, in addition to education. And of course the education mission is still there, and or that part of the mission is still there, and probably 75% of the use is the education students, and that's because it's the Edvolution Center is not an auxiliary, it's co-curricular. And so because of the history, the education faculty have it more ingrained into their programs.
Mm-hmm. I always thought Edvolution was sort of tied in with the Apple Distinguished thing, which I want to talk about in a little bit. Are they tied together pretty close, or not necessarily?
They're tied together in the sense that we have the one-to-one. Every student has a device. I don't want to kill the lead, so I don't want to jump ahead of the Apple Distinguished.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's been redone. Talk about that a little bit and what that is.
Yeah. So Apple identifies schools that use technology effectively in instruction and development of students with Apple Distinguished School designation, and we just got our third Apple Distinguished School designation. Now, what's slightly embarrassing for me is I've been prepping the president and the provost for 3 years that we weren't going to get Apple Distinguished School again, and the reason is because we've always been Apple specific. Well, in 2019, we did a survey of our area schools, and they said, hey, you need more Chrome, you need more Google, you need more Microsoft Surface. Oh. And so we said, well, we're going to have to expand this out. We're not going to be able to stick with just Apple devices if we're going to serve our constituents. And so we went ahead and told the students, you don't have to get an Apple device, but your device has to do these things. And so students could identify whatever they wanted. We got classroom sets of Chromebooks, and we started to provide our students with the opportunity to get Google teacher certification. And they already get Apple teacher certification as well.
Okay.
So we were unsure if Apple would allow us to go through this. And so we communicated with Apple, and Apple gave us about 3 different answers, and I said, what the heck, let's just put it out there and see what happens. So we went out there and we got it, and of course, then I have to say, well, I was wrong. But I'm used to doing that, so I'm good at saying I'm wrong.
So the Apple Distinguished moniker, the thing that goes along with it, that's just using that technology in the classroom as a teaching tool. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, it is. It's incorporating it into the curriculum, incorporated into what you do effectively, so that you can enhance learning. Yeah,
So what are some of the other things that are happening? We talked on the last time you were on the program, and we ran out of time the last time you were here. So I want to talk about nursing nursing shortage. We talk about teacher shortage too. What's being done in those areas?
Yeah, and I would like to have a quick fix so we could turn out tons of nurses in a very short period of time. But our focus is going to stay on making sure that we have graduates who are as highly qualified as they can be. We're not just going to turn out numbers because that's not good for anyone. And so but we have increased the size of our cohorts, and in order to try to address this. It's not going to do it immediately. We can only grow so much because Missouri State Board of Nursing gives us so much room. Right. And so we hope that it's going to help us to produce more nurses. Nursing is in crisis. At the same time, nursing education's not far behind that. Now we have, it's stressed us in terms of clinical placements and the ability to do certain things in clinical placements. It's stressed us in terms of replacing faculty. And so it has been quite difficult over the last couple of years with the pandemic and everything that has led us to this point with the nursing shortage. And so our focus is and always has been and always will be on turning out graduates who are the top in their field, and our first-time pass rate on the NCLEX exam is still well beyond the national average, and I would say over the last 10 years we're probably somewhere in the upper 90s, 95-96% first-time pass rate. So that's pretty darn good.
Well, is there still interest as far as students coming that want to go into nursing? Is there still a desire for that career path?
Yes. We saw over the last few years, and I've compared these numbers to some of our other in-state schools, we saw drops in overall enrollment. And what that means is that the number of people who are applying to your cohorts, where you used to have maybe 80 or so students applying to the cohorts, well, maybe that was 45 or 50, because we saw us go from 670 majors or so to 450. And at Missouri State, Central Missouri, they saw the same pattern. Those are coming back up. I get these weekly admit reports, and the university's admitting 45, 50 students a week who are interested in nursing. Now those students have to get to the point of application, but right. But still we're seeing those numbers come back. So I expect that within the next couple of years that it'll be closer back to 600 total students. Now we can only accept so many per cohort, so right. You're looking at 80 per year, and so that means you might graduate 65 from 70 like a year. So yeah. We've had some struggles in terms of the students who went through their prerequisites during COVID and them adjusting back to life face to face with hard deadlines and things of that nature. And these are things that if you read the Chronicle of Higher Education, you see that this is a struggle that it's not unique to us. It's a struggle across all of higher education.
Along those same lines, let's talk about teacher shortage. I heard a story on NPR 2 weeks ago about that very topic. How's that being addressed here in our area?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little story. I was speaking with some donors from Tampa, and they told me last summer, in the middle of the summer, Tampa schools had 1,400 openings. So that tells you that this teacher shortage is real, and it's very large. And if you're reading the Southeast Missourian and you're looking in July and you see a district like Caruthersville's advertising and they have 8 or 10 spots open in the middle of July, you know that this is a real problem. So what we've been doing at Southeast is we have been working with districts on Grow Your Own programs. We started this before COVID. We've really ramped it up in the last year or so. And the state, the Department of Elementary Secondary Education, is providing districts and also providing teacher preparation programs like ours with grant funds to help develop these Grow Your Own programs. Districts get retention funds, they get Grow Your Own funds. And so what we're doing is we're working with the different districts on Grow Your Own and trying to help them to develop these programs. And we are trying to align scholarships with these schools or these areas. So tomorrow I'm having lunch with superintendents from East Prairie, Charleston, and New Madrid. And it's not really a surprise because this will air after that lunch. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop a grouping or consortium of those three schools so that they can work together on Grow Your Own. So a student who went to New Madrid can do their student teaching in Charleston or East Prairie, and then New Madrid would have first shot to hire them when they were done. We're doing that with some other districts. We have Advanced, Leopold, Delta, Woodland, and Zalma in a consortium. And we're very fortunate to have scholarship money for those schools and for graduates from those schools, so that if the school tells us, here's our graduate, we want them in the Grow Your Own, we will find ways to get them scholarship funds if they have a need. Yeah. They will then go and do their advanced field and their student teaching placement. So have a year-long placement at one of those schools. Their home school gets the option to hire them first. Where they did their field experiences gets the second option. Yeah. And so that's one thing we're trying to do. Now, we cannot force these students to go back to their home districts, and that's where the tricky part comes. Yeah. So if a student's from Zenith and they come to school here and they fall in love with somebody from St. Louis, we can't force them to move back to Zenith. And so, that there's not a hook. And the more I've talked to different people at different universities about this, I keep saying that there is no hook. It's just hoping that they go back to that district.
It's like a good program. We're out of time, believe it or not.
Oh, well, I'm not shocked.
Well, it's good to talk with you again, Joe.
Nice.
Thanks very much.
You too.
Okay, when we come back, Dr. Jason Sides from Southeast Department of Political Science will join us. He's going to talk about midterm election results. You're watching Focus on Southeast. We will be right back.
What is Southeast Missouri? Let's try this again. You are Southeast Missouri. You make Southeast Missouri what it is. And Southeast Missouri is who we are. It's in our name. It's in our past. And with you, it's our future. Welcome home.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast. The 2022 midterm elections are behind us. What happened to the so-called red wave, and why didn't it materialize? I'm joined now by Dr. Jason Sides. He's Associate Professor in the Department of Political Science, Philosophy, and Religion. Hey, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
And good to see you. So what happened to the red wave, as it was called?
Well, I think one of the things that likely happened was that the pollsters just weren't as accurate as we would like, right? Mm-hmm. I think they were projecting a vision of the future that was based on some assumptions that weren't really reflected in, the voting behavior of the people who went to the polls that day. So we were expecting a red wave. What we got was maybe a red ripple, and that's about it.
I would like to talk about polling because it seems to me that over the past, 6-7 years especially, the polls leading up to an election tell us one thing, but then in reality it's something else. Why are pollsters having so much of a hard time giving us accurate, result of what's going to happen or a prediction of what's going to happen?
Well, I think one of the things that we got to keep in mind is that over the last few years, you see polling becoming more of the story, right? So the data, the results of the polling is being pushed as a news item in and of itself, kind of like a horse race kind of coverage.
Okay.
So the pollsters are under more pressure to get results out earlier and often so that those results can make it into the media, right? Well, in that rush to produce that data, they have to make assumptions about what the future will look like and what the composition of the electorate will look like. And I think over the last few election cycles, what we've seen is that they've assumed that the people going to the polls are going to look one way, and they're just missing some underlying trend there. So, this past election cycle, they were overemphasizing this Republican surge that didn't materialize. Well, part of that is going to be attributable to the fact that they assumed more Republicans were going to go vote on election day. They had an assumption that was based on what had happened the previous two election cycles. This election cycle was different, and as a result, they were off. So I think, one of the problems you're seeing is that they have to make some guess about what the future will look like so they can move forward. Their guesses are off election cycle after election cycle. And so we're getting a lot of noisy estimates that aren't really painting an accurate picture of what's going on.
How much did cell phones, as they became more prevalent, because there was a podcast that Nate Silver was on, he's a pollster, a lot of folks have probably heard of. He talked about the golden age of polling, and that we're no longer, that's sort of in the past now. Speak to what that is, and then how cell phones may have changed how some of this data is gathered.
Sure. So, back in the 1980s or the 1990s, when landlines were the only way to reach people, as a pollster, you would randomly dial digits in a particular area code. Now, because the landlines were so prevalent, you would also know which numbers were associated with residential addresses. So you could screen out all the business numbers, and you could say, look, I want a randomly generated number that's going to be in Cape Girardeau that's associated with a residential area. The computer would pick the last four digits, it would dial, you would get somebody at home who'd pick up their landline and say, hello, who is this? And they would probably talk to you and answer your poll questions. Well, now that we've gone into the era of cell phone, there's no way to know who you're getting to the same degree when you're randomly generating those numbers. So we, as pollsters, aren't going to know whether this number is likely attached to a residence, whether it's attached to something else. You also have the problem that some people keep their numbers after they move away from an area. So even if I get through to an actual person, there's no guarantee that they're still living in Southeast Missouri. They could be in, I don't know, San Diego or Sarasota, Florida. We don't know. So what you're getting with cell phone coverage is you're getting a lot more instability injected into those models that pollsters have to make. They can't really control for that variability or that instability as they had in the past. In the past, it was a whole lot easier for them to do. They could make some adjustments and come up with a fairly accurate picture of reality. Now, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's, you don't know what you're going to get until after the election, and then you can go back and say, okay, what did I do wrong?
And it could be for a lot of folks, for our cell phones, they have spam blocking software, and so if a number is not something that would typically call you, your phone just may never let it through, right?
Yeah. So, for instance, like I have a Google Pixel. Depending on who's calling, if it's a business, it's going to get screened into one folder. They'll be asked to leave a message. I'll never know that they called until later, and I'm looking through my messages. If it's suspicious, they just hang up really quick, and they do that for me. It's a convenience, but the sad part is for the pollsters, they're never going to make it through to somebody who has that service. So that's a whole segment of the population that's just screened out and will never be surveyed.
And some people may not want to give the answers to a polling questions anyway. I mean, they may answer the phone, find out who it is, and just say, well, never mind, click.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing that back when I was involved in polling back in the 90s, that was a common thing. You would have people say, well, I don't really feel comfortable sharing my views. Thanks, and then they would hang up. You're still going to get some of that, but we don't even know if we're going to get through to those people in the first place. And so, there's going to be a whole debate about how much of the voting public you're missing.
So then that begs the question, how can we get accurate polling data going forward? If the assumptions that the pollsters are using have not been right the past 3 cycles, 4 cycles, whatever, how can they make adjustments so that future polls will be a more accurate reflection of what may happen election day?
Well, I think as long as the technology is with us, it's going to be difficult, right? You're going to have a hard time reaching some of these folks because they are using cell phones, they do have call blockers. That's just going to be difficult to reach those folks. So I don't know how much progress we can make there. I do think on our modeling assumptions, like the predictions we're making about the voting public, I think we can improve there a little bit. And I think what we're going to have to do is recognize that there's more younger voters coming into the voting public. And so we're going to have to kind of statistically manipulate the data to reflect the fact that every year there are more and more younger voters. The baby boomers are going to the Woodstock in the sky and they're not voting any longer. So we have to take that into account.
We got less than a minute, so one more question. So has the public's, trying to think of the word, that believing polls, even if the polling does get correct, are they going to have faith that the poll is going to be right, even if changes are made over the next 4-8 years?
I don't know that they will have a lot of faith in the polls because the pollsters have been so inaccurate recently. And I think what's troubling for our democracy is to think what percentage of potential voters are going to be influenced by that. If you have a candidate, if you have a preference, you should go to the poll and make your voice known. The fact that there's some evidence that people do take the polls into account, that is kind of concerning.
Jason, thanks very much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Focus on Southeast is a collaboration of KRCU Public Radio and the Department of Mass Media here at Southeast Missouri State University. Just a reminder that portions of these conversations will be broadcast on KRCU Public Radio and will also be available online at krcu.org. From the Russ Center for Media, I'm Dan Woods. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in next time when we focus on Southeast.